everybody. Hello, everybody. This is for your attention. We're going to start in 4 minutes, so please be prepared to take a seat, and we'll get started in 4 minutes. Now we're at the 2-minute warning. 2 minutes. So please take your seats. Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. What? I don't get the normal good morning back. What's going on here today? Good morning, everyone. Let's try that again. Thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Can you believe it? It's been 4 weeks since we've last gathered at Good Cheer and 5 weeks since our last platform. My name is Dan Overman, and my pronouns are he and him, and I am the volunteer host for today. I'm grateful that we can gather together today in the spirit of shared values and community. Whether you're a longtime member or a first-time visitor, here in person or joining via our live stream, we're glad you're here. We are truly fortunate to be in this community together. So that our time together is not interrupted, please take a moment to silence your devices or put them on Do Not Disturb. I appreciate each of you and your consideration and respect for one another. So, let's get started with our first musical selection. Our guest today is local pianist Jocelyn Rukaber. I missed that, didn't I?
It's okay.
Close? Rugaber, that's it. All right. She began piano studies at the age of 6 and playing professionally at the age of 16. She earned a master's in piano performance and pedagogy. Oh boy, I didn't get that right. Though classically trained, she is prolific at playing by ear. Her vast repertoire includes contemporary, jazz, classical, and just about everything in between. Jocelyn also particularly loves to throw down jazz versions of classical compositions. She's maintained a teaching studio here for 40 years, and she's delighted to be able to share her talents with us. We are thrilled that she is here to play for us, so please join me in providing her a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is, thank you. I'm so glad to be back here again. Funny thing about what I'm about to play, ironically, being a trained musician, this is, somebody's going to correct me after this, I know. Dan told me they will. A good friend of mine, Katie Mattis, retired violist with the Symphony, St. Louis Symphony, 40 years with them, first chair. So I had this piece in my mind that's been going through my mind for a couple weeks, and I thought, boy, that'd be great on the piano. It's a symphonic piece, and I went through all this stuff in college and all this studying of all the, but I was like, who is that? And I can't figure out who it is. So I called her this morning, said, Katie. So I ran over it on the piano for a second. I go, who is this? And she says, oh, it's Brahms. It's a Hungarian dance. I said, oh, thank God. Thank you, thank you. And then we're talking, and then suddenly she goes, well, maybe it's Sibelius, though. And I'm like, oh, come on, Katie. But if she doesn't know, no one, but somebody here does, right? So you'll recognize, it's a beautiful piece. I just thought it'd be good for piano.
Thank you so very much. That was delightful. By the way, if you visit Jocelyn's website, which can be found by just Googling her name, She has some jazz selections that are accessible from the website, and they are just delightful. So you might want to try that out. The Ethical Society of St. Louis is a humanist congregation, a place where people come together to explore the biggest questions of life and seek solutions that will make a world a better place for themselves and for others. We come together to celebrate our journey through life and affirm our commitment to live ethical lives without traditional religious beliefs, but guided by the core values of our organization. Typically, our Sunday platform features the reading of our core values by a youth from our ethical education group, as well as a short presentation by a member that we call opening words. The opening words are intended to allow us to learn more about one of our adult members to deepen our understanding and relationships. However, events for today's platform have been adjusted from the usual formula. The reading of the core values and opening words have been foregone to provide a bit more time for the remainder of our program. If you were present for this morning's forum session beginning at 9:45 here in the auditorium, you were able to view Gateway to a New Life in its entirety. The film tells the story of Afghan refugees forced to flee their country as it fell under the control of the Taliban. It is especially relevant to our community as many new arrival Afghan families have settled in St. Louis, a city in the film that describes it as needing and wanting the energy and spirit of new immigrants. Following our second musical selection, performed by Jocelyn Rugaber, we will show a short trailer of the film, followed by a panel discussion featuring members of our local St. Louis community who were involved in the film. So, please welcome back Jocelyn for our second musical selection.
I was trying to come up with something. I was just improvising last night, sitting and trying to figure out something that would maybe go with, what the discussion is and the guest speaking today, and I didn't do very well. But maybe you could, I don't even have a title, so that's how bizarre I am. So maybe you can come up with, say, well, this is a nice, the ones I was speaking to my husband, he said, no. So I'm just going to play it, and
Thank you so much. Very creative. Thank you. Before our panel discussion and the screening of the trailer of the film, we will take a moment to empty our minds, relax our bodies, and take some mindful, deep breath. Please join me for 1 minute of mindful breathing. Looks like we're all set. For those who weren't able to view the full screening this morning, we will now watch a short trailer of the film and then followed by a panel discussion. I'm going to ask our 3 presenters to come up to the platform just as soon as the trailer is finished.
When I was 15 years old, I got captured by the Taliban from school because I was learning English. My life was in danger.
You saw the pictures and the videos of Kabul International Airport. You can imagine what is going on there. And they wanted to arrest me. I cannot even breathe.
We were the 47th slowest growing metro out of the top 50. Folks, Detroit grew twice as fast as we did.
We're going in a spiral that's been downhill, frankly.
You cannot say loud enough or often enough that refugees and immigrants are welcome in the St. Louis community.
You have to bend the arc of demographic transitions. We have to be willing to fight for our city.
The idea is to have a comprehensive program like no other city in the country that will enable Afghans to build their lives here.
What we're doing here in St. Louis, nobody else is doing it around the country or around the world.
You know, if you look back at Bosnian arrival, the community has always been working to welcome people here. But now we're trying to be a little bit more deliberate.
Out of that came a group of people who spread the word about St. Louis being affordable, tolerant, and having jobs. We could replicate that with the Afghans if we do our work.
And that's the way St. Louis has been with the Germans and the Italians
Will our three presenters please join me on the stage? A little bit of a change in direction here. You'd think as many times as I've done this that I wouldn't get these pages all mixed up. Our panel discussion today features three members of our local community. Kathy Bretkowski, the director of today's featured film. She's a writer, producer, and director here in St. Louis. She has directed 4 documentary films and scores of short documentary features, many of which have been recognized by the regional Emmy Awards, MCA Golden Reels, and Telly Awards. Her documentaries have screened in film festivals, the New York Film Festival, the St. Louis International Film Festival, SAMA International Film Festival in Stockholm, and the Archaeology Channel Film Festival. She's one of the hosts of the HEC Media Interview Series with authors in collaboration with St. Louis County Library and St. Louis area independent bookstores. Zamzama Safi was born in Nangarhar Province, Afghanistan in 1997. The 5th of 8 children, Nangarhar Province is located along the eastern border with Pakistan, due east of Kabul. At age 15, she was abducted by Taliban members and held for 4 days. After escaping back to her family, she became an outspoken advocate for women's rights and universal education, eventually graduating at the top of her class from the University of Karwan in Kabul with a degree in political science. From 2012 to 2020, she worked as an interpreter for the coalition forces, helping the U.S. military provide aid to local Afghans and risking her life to collect intelligence on the Taliban. She was forced to leave her family and her homeland during the fall of Kabul in August of 2021. Since then, she has lived and worked in the U.S. and has become a public motivational speaker. Our third panelist is Lindsay Spencer. She is going to sit in for Moji Siddiqui, who was unable to make it this morning. So I'm not able to offer much of a background for Lindsay, but you are welcome to provide one of your own.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me here to speak. I actually just came to view the film this morning for the first time, which was outstanding. But I am an employee of Welcome Neighbor St. Louis, so I'm a family support coordinator there. If you were here to see the film, my coworker Madeline and I have the same job. We have the privilege of working with our volunteer community that we match with our new refugee families. So we have one of our volunteers here today that I saw in the audience. So I have the pleasure of getting to work with a lot of our new Afghan families that are moving here to St. Louis. I've been with Welcome Neighbor St. Louis for about 2.5 years as an employee, but I started as a family partner volunteer. And so I'm still very much connected with my Afghan family that's here in St. Louis. So I'm very excited to get to share what we do with Welcome Neighbor St. Louis with our community here, and wonderful to see all of you this morning.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Again, I thank you again for Dan and Diane Overman for that beautiful introduction, and Jocelyn for the beautiful music this morning, and thank you all of you for coming to be here and for your interest in this topic. I started working on this film a couple of years ago. It's really been about 3 years or more, and it kind of arose out of just doing some shorter pieces through the years about organizations like Welcome Neighbor, about other groups that do some cross-cultural communication or help help immigrants. It just became sort of a passion project for me. And then when the Afghan support program formed, I thought this will probably be a good long form film. So I need to mention HEC with much gratitude for helping to fund this and shoot it and standing behind this. And it took several years to finish the project, but it became something that became very close to my heart. I met such wonderful people like Zamzama and Moji, who could not be here today because her garage roof fell on her car this morning. So I guess a snow mishap, which are happening probably now. So I know she wishes she could be here. She's the person who really ran the Afghan support program. And what interested me about this and what I came to see as I put the documentary together was that there were dual storylines. And one of them is about the grit and determination and intelligence and dedication of these Afghan immigrants who came here, which I think you could extrapolate beyond the Afghan community to other immigrants who come because they want to be here. And they needed, especially in the case of the Afghans, very similar to the Bosnians, they have no home to go back to. They can't go back. And there are people in the world like that simply cannot go back to where they came from. And so without risking their lives, their families' lives. And so it's been my pleasure and my privilege to get to know the Afghan immigrants that you would have seen in the film and that you saw in the film and the trailer. I was also, as somebody who's grown up in St. Louis, had a real interest and found it fascinating, this other storyline about St. Louis. And I've lived here my whole life. I've seen how downtown especially has declined. And I've heard much about the population moving out of the city, maybe into the county, maybe leaving altogether, big corporations pulling out. And so it was interesting to me to have this dual storyline of a city that wants to revive itself and the counterintuitiveness of that. So many of my friends who live on the coast have said, I can't believe St. Louis is doing this. It's a shock to them that somebody in the Midwest would be, an area in the Midwest would be this progressive, So I love being able to counter that stereotype of St. Louis in whatever small way. And also just to shine a light on what's going on. And they're doing this sort of program now, I believe, the International Institute, for other groups as well, raising private funds to support immigrants who come and beyond the 90 days that the International Institute can, because they are, they're government funded for 90 days, and as all of us know, 90 days is not enough time to set up a new life in a new country. So there needs to be that continued support, much of which is provided by organizations like Welcome Neighbor St. Louis. There was some featured in the film Oasis International, Christian Friends of New Americans. I could mention many, many more. We just have to kind of, as filmmakers, go, okay, these are my representative people that are like, speaking for a larger group. And Welcome Neighbor was one of them. So I think that's all I needed to say. I did want to give Zamzama and Lindsay a chance. Well, Lindsay, you just introduced yourself, and thank you for that. Zamzama, I'd like her to introduce herself as well. For those of you who didn't see the film, she is a remarkable young woman who had quite a harrowing experience, indicative of what happens to women around the world, where she was captured by the Taliban for going to school when she was 15. She lived in the Nangarhar province, which did not necessarily have US control at the time. So the Taliban was in control, and she and her family had to move because of safety, and she, through her work with the US military, got a special immigrant visa and is here in St. Louis. And the special immigrant visas are a path to citizenship, at least at this moment. So that's good, because we want her here. So anyway, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Zamzama.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to Ms. Kadi for making this documentary raising the Afghan immigrants' voices. I am Zamzama from the documentary you just saw. Ms. Kadi asked me to give a brief update of my life. I came here to the US after the fall of Kabul in August 2021. Starting last April, I have been working for Monarch Immigrant Services. We work with the immigrants to help them access social services and try to adjust to new life in the United States. As you can imagine, this is an enormous challenge, particularly for my female Afghan clients. In many cases, they don't speak a word of English and don't want to leave their homes even for a doctor's visit. People always want to know about my family that's still in Afghanistan. They are currently living very low-key, and they are struggling financially because none of the women are allowed to work. I am trying to bring them to the United States. That is a very complicated process. But recently, there have been some reasons to be optimistic. My twin brother, who currently lives in Germany, might be coming to visit me next month, if all goes well. I am very excited about that. Last year, I completed a draft of my memoirs, and I am looking for a publisher. Recently, have a new apartment in a kitten named Liberty. And I would like to say that as suffering had conquered my whole life, I tried not to forget to love and to stay hopeful and positive. And that became a constant practice in my life. My message for everyone is just to keep smiling, stay positive and hopeful in their life. Thank you so much for listening. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.
So I'll just take just a minute to tell you a little bit more about Welcome Neighbor STL. So as Kathy said, the International Institute is our biggest resettlement agency here in St. Louis, and so they are responsible for helping families as soon as they get here for those first 90 days. But some exciting news from Welcome Neighbor St. Louis is that we are starting to kind of tiptoe into the resettlement work, and this week we have our first 2 families arriving to St. Louis, and we will be picking them up from the airport. We will be responsible for all of the resettlement pieces that the International Institute does. We're so thrilled. We've had such support from our community. Our volunteers are excited to start meeting our new families that are arriving. So this has been a dream of Jessica Bueller, our executive director, for a long time, to be an organization that gets to welcome these families when they arrive in St. Louis at the airport and help them get established. And then also, because we can have programs that go beyond those 90 days, offer support for at least a year, where we connect them with a volunteer team that will help get them to their appointments, help their children with school conferences, live life together, go to the zoo, go to zoo lights, go sledding at Art Hill. We've had several of our volunteers take families to Art Hill to go sledding, and just introduce them to the beauty of St. Louis and living in America and how welcoming we can be. So those are some of the very exciting things that are happening at Welcome Neighbor. And if you are ever interested in volunteering with us, we would love to have you. I'm happy to share my contact information, and you can just check us out online as well. And if nothing else, I always encourage everyone to join one of our supper club events or cooking events, because the food is outstanding. And one of the programs we've been able to expand on is having our chefs share their stories. So Zizi had mentioned some of our families that come, many of our families that come, especially the women, don't speak any English. So we are providing them with resources to help learn some English so that they can share their story, because that is so much more impactful for our community if they know who is providing the delicious meal for them and who are the new neighbors that are living next to them. Thank you.
I would love us to be able to answer some questions from you. So I think Dan is going to take the microphone around.
Well,
I don't know if we
I
could
just-
put the lights up just slightly. I'm having trouble seeing anybody from up here. The house lights, I mean, if they can go up a little bit. But.
So we're going to start the Q&A now. Bob Pickard has the mic, and he will run it around to you. We're going to start with Bob's question, since he has the mic. Not working?
Is it on?
There we go.
Okay, great. So I had a question, Kathy. You interviewed a lot of people interested in having a success story with the Afghan community in St. Louis, similar to the one that we saw with Bosnians. Is that progressing? Is that working?
Lindsay may have some information about specific people as well and what they're doing, but I know that the Afghans have, many of them resettled very successfully. The ones who haven't decided to go to work for a company. Some of them are forming businesses, and making it and finding the opportunities are here. The Nawabi family, who was featured there, just bought a home. He works overnight, typical immigrant, hardworking people. He works overnight at a optical lab, and his wife works during the day at Naheed Chapman, and she is a brilliant woman who is getting an academic English degree at Washington University. She wants to learn how to write academic papers and so on. So, they're making it thanks to organizations like Welcome Neighbor and support people. I think the women, as Zamzama said and could speak to more eloquently, are really having a hard time. It's a big cultural difference for a lot of them. So there are people helping with that.
Hi, I watched the film this morning, and one of the things that touched me from the St. Louis aspect was that I would call the tapestry of organizations that have sort of sprung up and woven themselves into the needs of immigrant families. Is that an unusual process, or what do you think is the St. Louis angle for how this happens?
I love that you picked up on that. So since our Afghan community has been growing here in St. Louis, there have been some new nonprofits that have just started. And one of them that comes to mind is Kindness Begins With Me. It was started by a woman who saw a need for English classes and wanted to figure out what she could do to support this new community that was coming to St. Louis. She's a mom. She has 6 children, I think under the age of 10. I don't know how she even began to do this, but she had a minivan, and so she could pick families up. And so what she started doing when the Afghan immigrants were coming to St. Louis, there was not enough housing, immediate housing for them, so they were staying in hotels. So Letty would go to the hotels and was meeting families, and they were taking them out to the park and to go grocery shopping. And she decided that she could tap into her community and offer more structured events for these families. And so now Kindness Begins With Me. I have no idea, they serve over 100 people every week at an English class every Thursday night, and it's designed for entire families. So then they have drivers. If you can't get there because you don't have a vehicle, which is very common when you first arrive to America, they'll pick you up. They have classrooms, and they're designated by gender and age. And people are learning English. They're taking computer classes, coding classes. There's a Python coding class that she's offering. She also has a mother support group. But it was just seeing a need. And the wonderful thing that with Welcome Neighbor that we've been able to do, when I started working there a couple years ago, we knew that there were other organizations that were complementing what we were doing. So we started a collaborative meeting once a month with other organizations like Oasis, Christian Friends of New Americans, Monarch Immigrant Services, Just Serve, and Kindness Begins With Me. And we sit around the table every month and talk about what are we doing, what are new resources that we have become aware of in our community, who are the families that we're focusing on, and we want to make sure that we are being equitable with the work that we can do, and we want to make sure nobody that we know of is falling through the cracks. So it's out of great people with big hearts, and I think that says a lot about our St. Louis community.
This question is for Zamzama. How would you describe your cultural experience upon arriving here in St. Louis?
That's a very good question. Even though I grew up with the U.S. military in Afghanistan, I knew about American culture a lot because they were explaining to me and I could speak English. But still, when I came to the United States, it was a culture shock for me because all the freedom that I knew and all the things that I knew was living in the military base. And that was very limited. But I was very excited living on the base, and I thought this is the freedom. But when I came to the United States, seeing all these opportunities, discovering all these great things, privileges, blessings here, I was in shock. And I was like, oh my gosh, how I can drive here. I was crying at night that all the places are looking the same, but I didn't know there is GPS exists that I can use and navigate. And when my host family were saying, oh, this restaurant is 10 minutes away from here, I was like, how she knows that it's 10 minutes away, like the exact time. But later on, my driver instructor, he explained to me that, okay, when you're driving, you put like the address in the GPS that will tell you like where to go. And I was like, oh, this is how my host family was saying that the restaurant is 10 minutes away. So even though I was speaking English, it was a struggle. I didn't know how to use debit card, credit card, how to do groceries, like purchase things, how to do shoppings, big malls. These were all new for me. And I was in a culture shock for 6 months.
This is also a question for Zazama. Did I say your name right?
Zamzama, or you can call me Zizi.
Zizi, okay, that's easy, Zizi.
Yes.
So they mentioned about the role of women, so I'm thinking of a traditional Afghan family comes here with the traditions of expectations in the family for the various gender roles. And they find that not only is the culture a shock in terms of that, but their kids now go to school and learn a very different set of expectations and roles about gender. So that puts, I'm guessing, this is what I'm asking, women who arrive here with a family in a very confusing situation about what is their role, what should they do with their children, how do they manage this, how do they maintain their culture, how do they, so anyway, just could you speak to the kind of cross currents that these women must have to face?
That's a very good question. So I would like to say that most of these Afghan families that they came to the United States, a lot of them didn't even experience city life in Afghanistan. And they didn't even go to school in Afghanistan. And all of a sudden they came to the United States because their husband, their brothers, or one of the member of their family work and support the United States military in Afghanistan. But here, like coming, exploring a new culture, new language, it's a huge struggle for them. And they are struggling how to keep their values, how to maintain their culture here, and also like their kids that they're going to school, they cannot speak English, or they're getting bullied by other students in school. And those students, like these Afghan kids, they cannot even justify themselves because they cannot speak English. And when they come home, they're like explaining or telling the stories to their parents. Obviously, they're getting nervous about that. And also, like there's like religion differences. They're also trying to keep their religion. But it's still like there are a lot of challenges for them, but they're like getting better day by day to adjust to a new life, to an American life here in the United States. But also, besides everything, they are very appreciative having this freedom and a safe life.
A practical question for Kathy about the distribution of the film. And also, is there anything that people in this audience can do to help it get distributed? Because I'm assuming more people seeing it is advantageous.
I will screen it like in events like this anywhere anyone asks. I'm happy to do it, and I'm just going to keep doing that for quite a few months. We have another event February the 11th at UMSL, sponsored by the History Department. And that's the only other public screening I have on the books. At some point, I am going to put it on one of the library websites to make it available streaming in that way. I decided, even though some of my documentaries have been on Amazon, I didn't want to put it on that platform because a few of the people are hesitant because of the wide distribution that the Taliban or someone will see it. And in fact, Mr. Nawabi had somebody come to a friend's door in Afghanistan some months ago looking for him. So they, and they tell me it's okay to put it on the library websites because the Taliban is not literate. So I figure library website's probably safe. So there's a website for the film, gatewaytoanewlifefilm.com, or you can come to me after and I can give that to you. You could certainly get my email information from Dan or Bob. More than happy to hear from anybody. And I can put you on a list and I don't email a lot, but just when there's some news or a screening or something, I can let you know about that. But if you know people who might like to have this discussion, I'm glad to do it anywhere. So, thank you. Thank you for asking that.
Yes, my wife and go back many, many years with the International Institution. In fact, I would say we go back 50 years because my wife tells me stories about how she used to go down to the International Institution for dances. So she would dance with people. But after that, we got married and all that goes on. And we found out about a event they were having where you would go down and meet up with a couple and have a dinner together right there on the premise of the institution. And it was really enlightening for us, at least. And some of the people we met with didn't speak English. They were just there to meet and exchange ideas and find out what's going on. And I think that was really enlightening for me and made me feel really good. I mean, the meal wasn't free, but that's all part of the program, I'm sure. But another thing we have done that I think everybody can participate in is that we would donate furniture. I know they would have events where on certain days they would be collecting furniture, and I can remember taking down a trailer full of furniture, and they were very grateful. And there was pretty many people there donating furniture. So there's programs, I believe, that people in this community, especially the older people, have things that we can donate. And maybe there's events that they have where you participate for a day or a couple hours that would enjoy. So I guess I opened it up to an invitation for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people here, to join in some events that may be taking place at the institution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, we have Mary Ann up here.
I just wanted to piggyback on that. Your furniture donations made me remember we have a partnership with Home Sweet Home, which is located in Maplewood, and that is where many of our families go shopping. So it's a great place to donate your furniture. We are able to pay $100, and a family of ours can go and pick out their furniture from the warehouse, and then staff from Home Sweet Home will deliver it and set it up in their home. So every time we get phone calls about where to donate furniture, we always want to pass that along to Home Sweet Home, is where many of our new immigrant and refugee families are getting their furniture. Thank you.
And I just wanted to mention to that point, the supper clubs also, to watch out for those Welcome Neighbor sponsors supper clubs at various churches or organizations around town. And they're open to anybody, and there's a small charge for the food, but the food's wonderful. And again, it's, as it was mentioned in the film, the women cooks keep the proceeds, and that's a good way to get one-on-one with people and hear their stories. And if there's any other thing that comes out of this film, I hope it helps us all to see kind of, when you see an immigrant family, kind of pause to wonder, what is their story? Because it's going to be an amazing one. And they're going to be somebody who wants to live here. So I just, I think sometimes, not this group, but, we get caught up in political rhetoric around immigrants. But, the people who are here want to be here, and they have wonderful, amazing stories to tell.
Bob, we have a few up here in the, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay. Just a comment to add to what Ron Wirtz said, and I'm his wife, Tony. And my comment is just to commend David Brown for all the work that he's done. He's responsible for us going to the International Institute and participating when you take a dish and then you eat with the International Institute immigrants. and it was really a worthwhile experience, and I hope to do that again. I just wanted to comment about that and thank David.
Hello. So my question is for International Institute of St. Louis. So last year I got the chance to conduct a research with your institute, and in this movie I learned about that you guys are providing some entrepreneur exposure to the communities. So I would like to understand like what kind of entrepreneurship exposure and the learnings you are giving to the new culture community or the people who are coming from other countries. Because in my personal opinion, every cultural community, they got something within themselves which they can contribute into the new community, maybe product related to any FMCG product or manufacturing product or in the hospitality industry, food, etc. So I just want to learn about it.
I think Lindsay and Zamzama may have some real examples of that because they're working very closely with the immigrant communities here. I just know that, you know, what happens is, and it's sort of the story of immigrants, many of the people who came were very high-level officials. They had done some amazing professional work. They're highly educated. And you get here, and because, you know, you may not have the best English skills, you don't find jobs necessarily that are at your caliber. Or if you were a doctor, you're not licensed to practice here, you know. So there's some organizations like Mosaic that really try to elevate refugees and immigrants like that and try to help them get the good English skills and everything else that they need to move back into a profession. But it can take some time, and sometimes that's generational, unfortunately. But I'm going to turn this over to the people who work directly with immigrants.
I would like to share a story of my friend and coworker who recently came to the United States in 2022. Farishta, by the help and support of International Institute, that International Institute grants some funding to her, she opened a business of Afghan clothing. That she has like international small business, that she is exporting or importing clothes from Afghanistan and selling here to the Afghan women. Because sometimes it's hard to find Afghan traditional clothes.
Yeah, so there's the grant program, which is wonderful that the Institute offers. They also, that was mentioned in the film, Claim Academy, which they've partnered with to help do computer training. There are job resources through the International Institute, and I believe as long as you've been here no more than 5 years, you can go back to the Institute and they will help you with some job placement opportunities. We have been helping some of our families through the Mosaic Project. As Kathy mentioned, we have amazing people coming here. Recently, I've just met a woman who was a midwife and a woman who was a dentist, and they are here and they really want to be going back to work, but it's very hard because their degrees don't transfer directly here to the United States, so they're going to have to redo a lot of their training, but they are excited to go to work, so connecting them with the Mosaic Project is a wonderful opportunity. And we have several people who are now part of a new program at WashU called Empower Up, where they help folks who have had professional degrees in their home countries become as proficient as possible in English so that they can excel quickly and find jobs within their field. So here in St. Louis, the International Institute has opportunities, but we have also a lot of other organizations who recognize the incredible potential that we have for our new arrivals that are coming, and we want to make sure that they get into jobs that they are happy doing and will also help them pay the bills, because even though it's reasonably priced to live here, it's still hard to support a family with only one income.
I'm afraid we're running out of time, and we have time for just one more question.
This is for Zizi. I'm curious to know what the current situation in Afghanistan is and how it's changed in the last 3.5 years. And you mentioned that it's complicated to get out, but are people still being able to immigrate today?
That's a very good question. I would like to say that Afghanistan is a worse place for women to be in. Taliban had like put a lot of restrictions on women's rights. Women are not even allowed to wear high heel shoes in public. Women are not allowed to speak outside. Women are not allowed to walk outside of their houses without a male escort. Women are not allowed to go to school, work in public. Basically, they are a housewife wearing burqa. Those women who achieved their dreams, who became journalists, reporters, doctors, nurses, they are just staying at home right now. Everything is like went back to 20 years ago in Afghanistan. And I don't know with the new administration in the United States, the immigration process will be very tough. And I don't know how those people who supported the United States military in Afghanistan will be able to come and leave Afghanistan and explore safety and a peaceful life.
Our panel, after twisting arms, has agreed to stay for lunch, so if you have additional questions, please, please, please feel free to engage with them. The Welcome team will now take up a split collection to support the Society as well as the International Institute of St. Louis. As you know, we rely on the generosity of members and friends, so please consider donating. If you don't have cash with you today, you can donate at ethicalstl.org/donate or use the QR code on the screen. Anything you may be able to offer will be appreciated. If you are interested in joining the Ethical Society or you are a visitor and would like to know more about the Society, please visit the Visitors Connect table in the Becker Room downstairs after platform today. And if you're not sure where that table is, please reach out to one of our members who can show it to you. Now it's our time for announcements. The first one is from the TWA, and they're announcing the first International Relations Lecture jointly sponsored by the Tuesday Women's Association and the American Association of University Women. It'll be held on this Tuesday, January 14th at 10:45 in this auditorium. The topic is our planet's plastic crisis, and the speaker is Dana Rippin of Beyond Plastics. It's free and open to all. Come and hear more about this important topic and what you can do about it. Next announcement is about the Uganda Humanist Schools and its fundraising. This is the last week to send in your donations for the Uganda Humanist Schools fundraiser. We will wire the funds the week of January 20th. Please send in your donations to the Ethical Society with UHST in the memo line, or connect with Nancy Jelinek or Rachel Jones by email for other donation approaches. Thank you so much for your incredible generosity. So far, we have collected $45,000. Emergency contraception kit. As you know, this was scheduled for last week at the forum, but it has to have been rescheduled, and the new date is Saturday, January 18th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the Becker Room. The weekend is a national day of service, and we encourage you to go out and do service for reproductive health and justice. There will be both seated and standing options for those who wish to participate, and you only need to bring your positive attitude to participate. Please connect with Krista White with your questions. Thank you for putting your ethics in action together in community. Today, a rescheduled first Sunday lunch. As you know, this is the second Sunday. So, this was to occur last week and has been rescheduled for today. The luncheon is hosted by the activity group that we all know as Humanist Hangouts. The Humanist Hangout is an inclusive group that fosters relationships and builds community through just plain spending time together. They create social events each month that vary widely and cater to a diverse group. If you're old enough to vote, you're old enough to hang out. Their gatherings have included happy hours, game nights, movie nights, volunteer opportunities, local festivals, camping trips, and like today, a post-platform lunch. They primarily use Facebook for planning and communication, so please find them on the web. Today's menu, by the way, is comprised of a variety of soups and for kids, PB&J sandwiches. Adults, I'm not sure what the charges are, so there'll be $6 for the adults, $3 for our youngsters. Thank you for the Humanist Hangout Group for preparing and organizing our lunch today. For those familiar with the Ethical Society, one platform per year is focused on the annual pledge campaign, its importance, and its intent. This year, that Pledge Sunday will occur on January 26th. It will be presented by the Stewardship Task Force Committee, which is comprised of Matthew Heil, Marianne Perkins, Claude Bernard, and myself. The platform will address effective stewardship and will focus on the sustaining of our community and maintaining of our building. Please recognize that financial and volunteer support enables absolutely everything that we do here, from supporting our youth education program to maintaining our building, equitably compensating our valued staff, engaging excellent musicians and speakers, supporting ethical action in the community, and offering meaningful, inclusive, and humanist program for all ages. This is accomplished through the involvement of both staff and volunteers, using a broad array of teams, groups, clubs, and events. It's very much hoped that you will plan to attend and join us. Normally, we don't make announcements so far in advance, but since we had such a long break ahead of time, I thought this would be useful to remind you. On February 2nd, there will be two events. The forum will be another opportunity to find out about the matching gift program, which, by the way, I skipped an announcement. January 19th, after platform here in the auditorium, for those who haven't yet heard about or learned about the Pledge Campaign's new pilot program for matching gift funds, the task force team will be here to answer your questions. They will also be available February 2nd at Forum. And then on February 2nd is the post-platform complimentary luncheon intended to thank members and friends for their generosity as well as to celebrate in community. Visitors, be assured the invitation includes you, so please, please join us. And of course, volunteers will be needed to help with the preparation, setup, and cleanup, so all willing volunteers will be asked to sign up using the form that will be made available in the weekly email blast, so keep an eye out for that. It hasn't come out yet. We would love to keep you informed about future events at the Ethical Society of St. Louis. You may use the QR code to sign up for weekly newsletter, check the Friends of Ethical Society Facebook group, or email the relevant staff person or member. This is a busy, vibrant place that relies on volunteers, and I hope you'll get involved and connected in the community in ways that feel meaningful for you. Now, we're going to have our third musical selection. Let's welcome Jocelyn back to the stage for her final musical piece.
Dustin. I'm really proud to say we donated a really nice sofa. I cried when it left my house to Home Sweet Home this year. So it was really kind of broke my heart, but it was like, no, this is all, it's very good. And so I hope a family, it went to a good family, I know that, and a good home. So a couple of friends of mine have got me on with that, and I really highly recommend. It's good. I'm just going to play a piece that Chuck Mangione, this is going way back, 70s horn player. A lot of you may remember that name. I always loved him, I still do. And a movie came out in the 70s, Hal Bartlett directed it, Children of Sanchez. So the piece is called Lullaby, and I really hadn't seen the movie, but I've always loved them. I still have the double LP to it. Without dreams of pride and hope, a man will be, though his flesh still moves, his heart sleeps in the grave. Without land, man never dreams because he's not free. All men need a place to live with dignity. And this is just came from part of the lullaby that Chuck Mangione collaborated with his musicians. And so it's really beautiful.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Thank you. I would also ask that we give another round of applause for our presenters today. And presenters, if you would make your way up to the front and with anybody that came with you, because I'd like to personally escort you downstairs for the luncheon. Thank you all for being here today, for each other and for yourselves. I hope today's platform helped you feel more connected to one another and motivated you to get involved in the community and causes that you find are passionate. I also welcome you to spend more time in community today. Not only do we have coffee and tea today, but we have the community luncheon hosted by our Humanist Hangout group. It's in the Becker room downstairs following this platform. If you don't know where that is, please feel free to follow the crowd as they make their way downstairs using the stairs or the elevator. And lastly, though we didn't have time to recite the list of core values today, we do have time for one short related statement. Let's be obsessive about using and applying kindness in a manner that elicits the best in the spirit of others and therefore in ourselves. Have a great rest of your day and an extraordinary, wonderful weekend. Thank you.